John Horrigan along with Terrence Gargiulo. Terrence, we're now getting prepared to see the men's épée individual final. Could you tell us a little bit about that, what we're going to be seeing?
Right now we're into the men's individual épée competition. Épée, John, is the weapon which is most like a duel. This is going to be the easiest for folks to follow. In this weapon, the entire body is target, and the first person to make a hit will get the touch. It's sort of like sudden death and first blood.
Also, you do not have to establish your right-of-way. Could you be a little more clear on that?
Well, in the other weapons that we saw yesterday, John, we had to deal with something called right-of-way. In right-of-way, if I make a thrust towards your target, you needed to block that thrust before you then could make a thrust to my target. We will have none of that tonight. The first person to hit the target will be the person to score the touch.
Could you describe the weapon that is the épée?
The épée, and we'll be showing you one a little later, has a large bell guard, and the blade is a little thicker. And the entire body, once again, is target, and the point of the weapon will be depressed against any part of the body, lighting a colored light, indicating a valid touch.
Peter Boriskin, our director, intimated to me that you could be a saber and foil fencer, but not a saber, foil, and épée fencer, because the three are quite distinct from each other. Could you tell us a little bit about that? Why could you not make the transition back from épée, say, to foil?
That's right, John. I think in saber, which is a cutting weapon, and foil and épée are thrusting weapons. So it's very difficult for the competitors to be able to go from making a cut or a slash to making a thrust with the weapon. So therefore, we don't very frequently see fencers doing both saber and épée.
Who are some names, Terrence, that we should look out for tonight, or should we say some the representatives from what universities?
Oh, this is really going to be a great final. I think we're going to see a lot of diversity. This will not be a final that is dominated by any one school, but as usual, as we've seen, I think Penn State and Notre Dame will certainly have some strong fencers, and we're hoping to see some new faces as well, John.
Great. So stand by as we are just moments away from the men's final of the épée competition. We'll be right back after this. Well, as you're looking at the metal podium, the stand being dismantled, standing atop it is Team Notre Dame.
Team Notre Dame. Team Notre Dame, and they really came in and surprised us. Earlier in the day, we saw a very close match between St. John's University and Notre Dame. Notre Dame got the better hand in that match, and they're very happy today to win the gold medal.
Yeah, in the men's team foil competition. So we're just moments away from seeing the men's final in the épée division. You're watching the 1994 NCAA Fencing Championships on ABT. We'll be right back. We talked about the forward and backward movement of fencing in all three classes. What I noticed today, Terrence, was the lateral movement in, I believe it was the foil competition, the team foil. Is one weapon more apt to cause lateral movement than another? Because I noticed a great deal of fouls. Of course, if the fencer were backed up off the strip, he would be penalized a point.
That's right, John. That's right. I think you see some lateral movement in foil, and there was an exciting foil team final, and as the bouts become fast and furious, the fencers oftentimes will try to move to the side of the strip, even just to distract their opponent. In épée, if you would think of épée really as a boxing match, these guys, as we'll see later as the bouts become closer to the finals, you'll see them moving very, very fast up and down using the entire strip, both left and right, forward and back, and it looks a lot like a cat and a mouse, or it looks a lot like a boxer grooving in and out, trying to get to the advantage, trying to be the first one to get to the target and make that touch, John.
Well, it is Burmeister versus Bauder. Burmeister on the right of your screen. As Terrence stated, 15-touch match. You have double touches where both fencers are awarded a point. We talked about, though, the quickness in the cutting movement. Could you clarify that a little bit more for our viewers?
Certainly, John. In this weapon, we're going to see a lot of thrusting. All the actions are scored with the tip of the weapon. Now, let me just back up for a minute and explain exactly how this electronic equipment, the scoring equipment, is working. You will notice that there seems to be like a line attached to each fencer. This is called a reel, and the fencer's weapon is plugged into this reel, and there's a cord that goes from the reel to the box. Right now, the fencers are taking their 1-minute break, so 3 minutes have elapsed in this match. And I believe Mr. Burmeister is struggling a little bit. Bill Shipman, the coach of Brandeis University, is giving a few words of wisdom and advice, advising Justin to be a little bit more careful as he comes in to avoid getting picked off by his opponent. So, once again, to re-explain the equipment, the line, John, attaches to the machine, to the box that the lights are then attached to. When the tip of the weapon is depressed, when it is touched against any surface other than the metallic strip, a light will go off. A circuit is completed, indicating that a valid touch has been scored. Right.
Oh, I was just going to say that, okay, so the official, or the director, as they call it, the one we're watching in this match, for Burmeister's match, his name is?
John Moss from New Hampshire.
Okay, so John is out of New Hampshire. Now, I noticed earlier on this strip number 1, they called for an armor. Could you tell me what is an armor and what is his specific duties?
Well, an armorer is the person who takes care of actually all of this electronic equipment. This is state-of-the-art equipment. Sometimes things go wrong, and we need to have technicians or people who are able to troubleshoot, determine what's going wrong, and fix it. Sometimes the reel is broken. Sometimes the machine might be broken. So that armorer just plays a technical role, ensuring that the equipment is of the highest quality and that it is always working properly.
What I found to be quite bizarre was that before the advent of this electronic equipment, and again, this sport was introduced in the Olympics in 1896, they had juries to decide if there were touches.
That's right, John. We used to actually call the director, who's now called a referee, a président de jury. The language for fencing, folks, is French. It does have a European history to it, and there used to be 4 judges that would stand on either side of the strip, so we'd have 2 on the left and right, and 2 on the left and right on both sides, and then a director that we now call a referee, or in those days was called a président de jury, who would then ask each of the judges, after an action had been made, whether a touch had been scored. So those 4 judges served as the eyes of the president of the jury. So we did not have the luxury of electronic equipment, which now has become the eyes for the referee out there.
Now, I noticed in one of the bouts earlier that one of the fencers threw his mask down in disgust, and at that point the director stopped the bout, went over to him, and gave him a tongue lashing, but I'm sure in proper English. You're supposed to have some sort of code of behavior as a fencer.
That's right, John. I think in any sport we hate to see sore losers, and we hate to see people who are abusive either to their opponents or even to themselves by treating their equipment in a violent manner. So I think what we saw earlier today was a fencer throwing his mask down to the floor, and the director was just asking him to behave in a better fashion.
Is when you do a bout, I know in basketball, for instance, I'll use this analogy, you get a certain referee, you know what you can get away with. Is that different in fencing? Is it the same in fencing that each director has his own way of calling a match, and therefore some of the tricks in your arsenal you'll either have to delete or you can add because you can get away with certain things with certain officials?
John's asked an excellent question. He wants to know, really, what is the role of the official and how do the competitors adjust to different officials? I think the official is certainly a variable in the equation, folks. How an official sees things, how they're going to call things, is really going to affect what the fencer does and how they behave. That is not as big of a factor in épée, where it's cut and dry, a little bit more cut and dry as to who scores the touch. But in the other weapons, foil and saber, the fencers are really going to pay attention to who that official is and adjust the way that they fence according to what they know to be that official's tendencies.
And the normal length of these bouts, is, as you said it's 3 minutes with a 1 minute rest, Terrence, and then you fence for another minute, at which time if you're still haven't reached the 15 mark, it'll be sudden death. First touch wins. Is that proper decipherment?
In some of our competitions, that is a format that is used. In today's format, we have a slightly different timing technique that we're using. in these 15-touch bouts, there are 3 3-minute periods. So if up until 15 touches, the fencers will fence for 3 minutes. If 15 touches have not been scored, there will be a 1-minute break. After the 1-minute break, there is another 3-minute period. So essentially, it's 3 3-minute periods in this tournament. There has to be a victor. So if at the end of those 3 3-minute periods, the score is tied, John, they have a sudden death.
Let's talk about getting to the Olympics. This is obviously the only avenue, if you're an American, to get to the Olympics. Isn't that so? If you're not a collegiate, then the odds are you're not going to have an opportunity to fence in the Olympics.
I think that's true. I think your best competitors come out of this NCAA competition. We have a saying that it takes a lifetime to learn how to fence and a lifetime to fence. Therefore, the average age of fencers tends to be in the mid to late 20s. We're beginning to see a lot younger competitors, but this competition is a breeding ground for our Olympic champions and for our U.S. Olympic team. So fencers for the Olympic team will be coming out of this competition eventually.
There's also a grueling mental strain, especially in the team competition. You fence, you have to sit around and wait to get called upon again. That plays a lot on your psyche.
I think it certainly does. I myself as a competitor have frequently had to learn how to be very, very focused and be very intense while I was fencing. And then at the end of my bout, I might have an hour, sometimes 2 hours to wait before fencing my next match. During that time, I've got to be able to relax. I've got to be able to forget about the last match and be ready to focus on the next one. So there's a lot of patience. There are a lot of mental skills that are required in order to be a successful competitor.
The match you're watching, incidentally, they're at the break period, as Terrence has described. Sitting down is David Rosenberg from North Carolina, being talked to by his coach. And his opponent in this particular match is a man by the name of Ben Millett from Penn State. And when you draw a fencer from Penn State, you really get your work cut out for you.
Certainly do, and UNC has produced some great fencers in the past. Ron Miller, the coach sitting down there talking to his fencer, has produced a lot of champions, and frequently from people who have not fenced before even getting to college. So he is really to be commended. He is fencing at this moment against a fencer with a lot more experience than himself, and it'll be interesting to see if he's able to go against that experience and defeat it.
Well, they're getting ready to fence again. Again, Rosenberg is on the left of your screen. Ben Millett from Penn State on the right of your screen. They are on the intermediary strip. There are strips all throughout the Gosman Center. How long did it take to set up this facility? You being from this home facility and official director yourself in this tournament. How long, Terrence, did it take to set up this thing?
Oh, gosh, I think they worked all day on Thursday, John. It was a lot of work, but Brandeis had a lot of people helping out. A lot of students came forward and helped out. Andy, the facilities manager here, did an incredible job of getting all of these strips. A lot of logistics goes into any tournament of this size or in any event of this size, and all of the people who have volunteered and spent their time, we're very grateful to them as well as Brandeis University.
Yeah, Andy Evanson. He's a perfect fit with this Gosman Center. He knows every nook and cranny here and helped coordinate this setup, as did Barbara Bickford and Jack Malloy, Mr. Cohen as well. Now, once you fence, it's not over. There's something known in any Olympic sport as drug testing. What are they, without being too graphic, what are they looking for when they drug test you? And it is a hard thing for an athlete to go through.
Well, a lot of athletes do not like drug testing. They feel that it's a breach of their privacy. Drug testing, particularly in the NCAAs, in all of the sports, has been a hot issue. What they're looking for are any sort of either substance abuse. They're also looking for any drugs which are performance enhancements.
Yeah, anabolic steroids and beta blockers.
That's right, John. That's right. In fencing, we do,
and I guess blood doping to a certain extent.
Blood doping, however, in our sport, the chances of seeing blood doping would not be all that frequent. So these athletes are drug tested, and many of them, unfortunately, don't like it.
And do you see a lot of athletes suspended as Brian Covell is joining us? Good to see you, Brian. Brian's been doing the public address here at this fencing tournament. And why don't we squeeze in here? Brian, first of all, for you, for the pronunciations, I went there before this whole tournament got underway, and the pronunciations are something when you're dealing with such different dialects and extracts.
Yeah, it's a good thing that we have somebody from the United Nations working at the table there with us. Otherwise, we'd be in tough condition. And even so, even though some of the pronunciations where I thought were pronounced accurately, some of the coaches took umbrage. So it's good that there are some people that are very familiar with all the kids here fencing. And it's funny because it seems like this is just I was talking to Joe Redmond about this. It seems like the people here know everyone else. It seems like there's this fencing subculture, and so the coach from St. John's is telling me the pronunciation for the kids who fence for Notre Dame, I don't know what that's necessarily reflective of. The fact that there are not a lot of people competing at collegiately in fencing, or it just so happens that the community in itself at this level happens to be pretty small, and it's obviously it's an elite group. I don't know what it's necessarily reflective of.
Very fraternal indeed. Let me ask you something. What is going on in that main table area that looks like the bridge on the USS Enterprise?
Yeah. What they're talking about right now is they're surprised that BC upset Carolina. Has absolutely nothing to do with fencing. I'll tell you right there. They just got off the phone. The guy who's working on the computer right now is just working on his seedings. Just got off the phone with his bookie. No, what they're doing constantly is they're updating the seedings and the rounds that are the result of the bouts that are going on right behind us now, and the assistant coach from Notre Dame, who is, I guess, the resident computer whiz, is constantly updating scoring totals. So, I mean, they need to have someone who's at the computer virtually throughout the time that the competition starts. So he's got his hands full. The other people who are sitting behind him there are just doing rules interpretations, and Joe Redmond and the coach from Fairleigh Dickinson, the assistant coach from Fairleigh Dickinson, are talking about that right now.
Now, this is your first fencing competition, is it not?
It is. As it is yours, John, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Even though
great job too.
Even though you're handling this like a seasoned veteran. I was thinking I was going to come up and get some questions about how the baseball team did.
That's been exciting. I've learned a lot from Terrence, from Peter, from Mike Mayer. Stopped by. His heart broken that he could not participate in it because he had one bad outing. But it is a fraternal atmosphere. Everybody knows everybody. The fencing crowd is an elitist type crowd. Not in a bad sense, but in a good sense. This is a very intellectual sport, is it not?
I would think so. Although it seems to me that the kids who were competing for, I had a chance to talk with a couple kids from Princeton last night after the bouts are over, and obviously some erudite and very aware and intellectually capable people, no question about it. My sense is that you get with this particular sport. It's tough to pick this up, I think, 2 years before you go to college and expect to be a competent fencer, and I may be wrong about that, but it seems to me you've got a lot of kids here who've been doing this for quite a while and have developed sports-specific skills. That's my impression.
Mm-hmm. And we are seeing a lot of would-be Olympians, are we not, Terrence?
That's right. We are seeing a lot of would-be Olympians, and these kids are doing a lot more than just fencing. They're weightlifting, they're running, they're doing a lot of different forms of training in order to be in the best shape that they possibly can to compete at this high level.
Let me ask you, do martial arts play into fencing? Do a lot of fencers practice martial arts?
Martial arts, I think a lot of people enjoy calling fencing a Western martial art, and I think that's a pretty accurate way to describe it. It is a mind-body sort of sport. These guys are moving really fast. These women and men, are moving very fast and furious, but they're having to make split-second decisions which require them to have full concentration and to be very smart and to change their strategy and their tactics. So it's certainly like a martial art in that regard, John.
Great. And Brian, thanks for joining us. I want to let you get back to your poker game over there at the bout committee table.
Exactly. I know. I was down a couple of hands, but by stepping out like this is a big change in strategy for me. So I think I'll get back to it now. Thanks a lot, John. Thanks.
Okay, Brian. Yeah, watch out for Joe Redmond. She's going to be having a dead man's hand up her sleeve, a pair of aces and a pair of eights. Terrence, we're again now as we pair off the fencers, we're getting down to the quarterfinals. Wozniak, I believe, is on the strip, of course. That is the farthest one away from us here. I asked them, are you going to be fencing the finals on strip 1 and 2? And they said, of course. What I failed to ask them was, are they going by the Phoenician numbering system? Anyways, as we look at Wozniak over there, he's going to be taking on the winner, I believe it's Rosenberg he may be facing. Now, for somebody like a Penn State that has a lot of fencing tradition, Notre Dame seems to be steeped in tradition as well in fencing. Are there any other prestigious universities throughout this country that you immediately associate with a top-flight fencing team, besides, of course, our own Brandeis?
I think Columbia and the University of Pennsylvania, these schools as well have a long tradition, Yale University. So there are a lot of schools that have produced incredible programs in the last 20 years.
The coaches that we see a lot of coaches defecting. Penn State's coach defected.
That's correct. I think a lot of the coaches that are in fencing right now are from the Eastern Bloc. We have Polish coaches, Russian coaches. We even have some coaches from South America. So there are a lot of foreign coaches in the sport at the moment.
Okay, now, as a collegiate, you participate in the NCAA championships. There are also junior tournaments and world tournaments and Olympic tournaments. Tell me a little bit about those, where, say, if this were 1990 for you, Terrence, and when you were at the height of your fencing career, when you were a participant, what happens after the NCAA fencing championships? What are the other alternatives and options you have as a fighter?
Well, a lot of these fencers fence in what's called the United States Fencing Association, and they also compete on the international level in World Cup competitions. So the NCAA is just one of many different types of competitions, and one of which many different levels that these fencers compete in. What comes next for these kids is, assuming that they are competitive enough, these kids will also compete in the USFA at various levels, either in the junior category. Junior category is anyone 20 years of age or under, depending on when their birth date is. It's called the under 20 category. There's also an under 17 and an under 15 category. There is also Division I and Division II in the senior ranks, and assuming that you are in the top of the senior ranks, as I am myself, then you can also compete in the international, on the World Cup scene. The World Cup is a lot like the skiing World Cup that you hear people talk about, or soccer World Cup. World Cups are, in fact, in many regards, tougher than World Championships and Olympics, because at the World Championships or Olympics, you only have 3 or 5 competitors from a given country. In a World Cup competition, John, we will sometimes have as many as 15 and 20 from a single country.
Wow. Huh. So we are just moments away from some serious swashbuckling. So let's hoist the Jolly Roger, and if you've got a stomach for a broadside, come aboard. We'll be right back with some fencing action right after this.
That's a great one. I like it.
As we get to now the final 8 fencers, we see Ben Maitre on the right of your screen. He's from the Air Force Academy. He's taking on Bauder from Wayne State. This is the Épée class. Terrence Gargiulo is directing a bout across the way. This is a single elimination tournament, which the winners go on. And maybe if we can pan to the right now, Brandeis' own Justin Burmeister is underway on strip number 1. He's fencing against Brett Briley from Ohio State. Brett Briley from Ohio State on the right of your screen. Justin Burmeister from Brandeis University on the left of your screen. This is the Épée competition. Any part of the body can be touched.
Thanks to the men's Épée competition. Please bring your ballot to the bout committee table for the outstanding fencer. I repeat.
You can hear Brian Covell in the background asking for the ballots for the outstanding fencer in the tournament.
Bout committee table. Thank you.
It's been a fantastic NCAA fencing championship here at the Gosman Center on the campus of Brandeis University. The other match, Maitre is leading 4-3, but we'll stay right here as Briley takes time out to tie his shoe, his $150 shoe. Beat a pair of Reebok Instapumps anytime. You have to have specific footwear in order to compete in this event. Burmeister on the left of your screen, Briley on the right. Briley being backed up. This event, you don't have to establish what's known as a right-of-way, which makes it much easier to officiate. The two fencers right now are going out through a feeling out process. This is the Épée class. 3-minute bouts, 1 minute rest, then you go for 3 more minutes until somebody gets up to 15. It is 1-0 in this match. Briley right now. Briley to the right of your screen from Ohio State. Ohio State not faring as well as they had hoped in this competition. Brandeis, on the other hand, has done fine job. The women's foil team finished 8th last night, which is their highest finish ever. Now, as you see, Briley being backed up into that shaded area. Peter, that shaded area denotes that you only, have a meter left?
Yes, that is as if you were fencing on top of a cliff, we like to say in the sport, because if a person is backed up past that 1 meter strip, you essentially fall off the cliff and give over a touch to your opponent.
So Briley, and as Peter stated, that you lose a point there, your opponent gets a point. Then they move the fencers to the middle of the strip. Now, as you can see, Briley's trying to adjust the curvature of his épée. Do you have to curve the épée, say, more than the saber or the foil?
Well, slightly. All bends have to take somewhat of a bend in order that when you hit your target, you don't either shatter the blade or cause your opponent a lot of extra grief. They usually tend to bend up and to the right as the custom demands.
Right now, Burmeister was the aggressor, and we're going to have a break. It is 2-1. Briley from Ohio State on the right. Burmeister from Brandeis University on the left as they break. Now, what is the most serious injury that you can recall ever seeing in fencing? I'm sure there hasn't been any sort of gores or impales, have there?
Well, actually, I have not personally seen any grievous injuries, but as the sport has progressed throughout the years, there have been 1 or 2 fatalities, and they brought about some of the newer safety gear which these fencers are using, which is called a plastron. A plastron is a garment worn under the arm of your attacking arm, and it actually guards, so should the blade break, as in one instance in the Olympic match, I believe, that if the point should break and you should be struck under the arm, the plastron ought to, I repeat, ought to, stop the blade from progressing into the chest cavity.
So you said the broken blade at the Olympics. Could you clarify that? What happened?
Well, it's actually quite a sad tale for the person who received the final touch, as it were, because the blade on his opponent's sword, the tip broke and was unnoticed by the officials, and when he was struck under his attacking arm, the blade pierced through his underarm and punctured his heart.
Which is the most vulnerable area. So that new piece of plastic or guarding the underarm area, you could liken that, I suppose, to the piece that a goaltender in hockey would use, that little piece of plastic that he attaches to the bottom of his mask. A few years ago, not to get into gory details, but a goaltender by the name of Clint Malarchuk almost had his jugular severed when a skate went over his neck. So there are these little nuances and devices that you have to have in fencing in order to protect yourself, because you truly are not wearing heavy armor.